ISP on this administration track. So today I'll be talking more about about the current architecture of how Informatica is. So if you're already aware of Informatica, it will be more in detail of what you're aware of. If you're not, or if you're new to Informatica, it will give you a picture of how Informatica operates. Okay, so that how Informatica operates at the back end. Okay, so that let's say if you are the one who is maintaining the environment, production environment using Informatica along with the rest of the technologies, you'd have a clear idea on what would happen at the back end if you click on something. Or let's say you have been asked to do a task and you have various options to deal with that, and what are those various options and how would those help to fulfill the requirement. Okay, and I hope everybody is for the same reason here, so let's not waste any time and we'll carry on with the demo today. And any questions, like Kapil said, if you're losing track of it completely, you have a chat option. Just chat over there. I'll try to get it over there on the try to answer those questions right then. If it is something related to your sessions, timings and other details, you can wait till the end. Yes, Kiran, this is the latest version as of now. We have the next version 9.5, which is yet to be released. Okay. Maybe in June 2013. Okay, so let me give you an overview of, like I said, or I'm assuming that everybody is aware of what Informatica is in the first place, but for the sake of introduction, let me talk a little bit about the tool. Now, Informatica as a tool is or has captured at least 20–25% of the whole market globally for whichever are using the data warehousing technologies. And though the number looks very less, 20–25%, that's the top. Okay, it is the #1 ETL tool which is being used in 25% of the BI implementations globally. Okay, why is it #1 in the first place? Is it has various options for you to plug in your source systems and target systems. By saying that, I mean, let's say your source system can be any of your technologies. For example, if you look here, let me highlight that for everybody. In this diagram, if you see the sources here, okay, any technology you name it, you have a plugin within Informatica. So all you have to do is give the details and start reading the data. And similarly, if you want the loading or the target system, when we say a traditional data warehouse, obviously a target system will be your database, and within that you have those dimensions, facts, star schema, snowflake schema, galaxy schema, and all those. But even though if it is not a traditional warehouse system, Informatica is a data integration tool. Okay, not only for traditional data warehouses, you can also use Informatica for integrating different systems by reading the source from one technological format and load it into another. By saying technological format, a simple example is, let's say you have Word documents and PDFs. Okay, you can even turn those as your source, okay, and load them into your targets using your targets can be a flat file or a database, relational content, or anything for that matter. Okay, so you have PeopleSoft, SAP, TIBCO, any kind of web services, any kind of XMLs, and unstructured data. When I say unstructured data, these are also called as UDFs, unstructured data formats. Your Word documents and PDFs, flat files, packaged applications. Packaged applications are nothing but your contents which I've already mentioned. So all these can be considered as your sources. Okay, and when we are moving them to the targets, we can have any of the list of options which I've just said. Okay, I have a question. Word documents and PDFs can be taken as sources. Yes, they can, but we have to have another plugin from Informatica that is called as B2B. B2B is nothing but business to business. This is another tool just like Informatica Standard Edition. What B2B does is B2B converts your Word documents into an XML format. Okay, it reads all the contents within your Word documents or the PDFs, ignoring the white spaces, getting all the related content into the hierarchical and element components of the XML format. You know the tags of it, your HTML tags and all that. So if you have a relationship which is nothing but the hierarchy or the elements within it, the Word document can be converted into an XML. Now that XML is sent to the standard edition, which it will be read as an XML source. But you have to integrate that with your standard edition. Okay, that is, yes, it is possible, and there was a successful implementation, especially within the United States, on the hospitality industry. Sorry, when I say hospitality, it is the medical sector, the hospitals, because within hospitals you have a lot of PDFs and Word documents transactions happening. For example, if I go to any hospital within US, they'll write a code for the ailment which I'm going, and they'll also write a code for the medicines which they are providing. For example, if you go with cold and fever, they'll write saying so and so has come with XYZ012. Now what is XYZ012? We have to refer to a content which is already present, which is nothing but your reference data kind of stuff, and load it into your targets. Okay, so this happens, this is possible, and this is also applicable to most of the financial sectors, because if you're aware of something called a Swift code, which is used for your bank transactions across international transactions which you're making, even that can be handled like this. Okay, so these are all the variety of sources. Now that's one point for it to be on the top of the list. The other point is the flexibility of usage. Now most of the flexibility which I have mentioned is at the developer level. So at the admin level, what is the flexibility we have? The easiest part, or from the technological perspective, the most of the administration is handled by a thin client called admin console. Okay, it is nothing but a website or the web page on which or with which you can operate most of the admin tasks. If your admin tasks are done in your administration console, which is a thin client. When I say thin client, it is nothing but a web page which has commands within itself, and it will communicate with the installation done on the server and does most of the admin activities. But the rest of the 5% or the 10%, whichever has been left out, is done using something called as repository manager tool. Okay, this repository manager tool is especially sorry, especially used only for deployment and your folder organizations, giving permissions, enabling the versioning, disabling it, and things like that. Okay, so we'll see more of these in detail going forward. For now, um, those are the main features or why Informatica is on the top list now. Now, coming to the hardware part of it, obviously latest infrastructure is what every technology expects. So for this, you have two versions, 32-bit and 64-bit, and there is no limitation on how much of space or hard disk space you can have on the installation server. And minimum is very less, like 20 GB or 40 GB, but even everybody's laptops are more than 500 GB these days, so obviously a server will be more than a TV, or at least something with which we can be able to start. Now, saying that this is only for installation part of it. Now, if you want to have, or if you want to manage the volumes of the data, when you say volumes, depends on how many number of records you're reading as source and how many number of records you're passing through your transformations into the targets is the number of volumes, or simply saying it's the total number of records processed on a daily basis. That can be any number. Usually in most of the top level projects, it will be close to 400 to 500 million records, which happens on a daily basis. One second, guys. Which happens on a daily basis. Now, based on those volumes of data, your hardware also would change, because processing that kind of data requires a lot of buffer space, RAM space, and your logging space on the server. Because if you have that many number of jobs, you need to have that kind of space to hold all that content. If any of the failures happen, you should be able to go to the logs and see why that failure has occurred. If that's related to the development team who should be answering that, or related to the admin team who should be answering that. Anyways, whoever it is, they still have to go check what they have to deal with and how they should solve it. So that infrastructure depends on your volumes of data. Okay, so that's about the installation part of it. Now, the second point, what are the basic things which are required for you to start installing your Informatica? So obviously it should be a 32-bit or a 64-bit version of Windows, Linux, Unix, or Solaris, any of these boxes, it will work. Okay, provided, I wouldn't say provided, I would say first thing which we need to do is install the database. The database can be anything, any relational source, Oracle, Sybase, SQL Server, anything at all, because the backend of Informatica is operated based on the content on the tables. If anybody of you have worked on SAP or any of those technologies, most of them have the similar structure at the back end. Though you see many of the contents on the GUI and the front end of your system, at the back end, all you're seeing and operating on your front end using the clicks are your insert, updates, and deletes on the base tables at the back end in the database. Okay, we'll talk more about it, but for now, so the basic things are your database, and on top of it you have to install Informatica. Okay, now Informatica install a straightforward process. There is not too much of configuration. All you have to know is what is the username password to connecting your database, because while doing the installation we will create the number of tables on your database. That is nothing but your repository database. Now, what are the total number of base tables we have? The total number of base tables can vary anything between 500. Now, this depends completely on your licensing part. So based on the licensing, on the features which you are considering from or buying from Informatica, the number of tables would vary, but the minimum is 520 or something, and the maximum is 578 or 582. Okay, now we don't have to understand all of these tables. We can just ignore these. There are only specific requirements where you have to go with this, but 99% of the projects or 99% of the operating projects would not give access to these tables even to the administrator. I mean, administrator obviously will have access to it, but they would not play with it or tamper it, because Informatica gives you a straight instruction that anything corrupting in any of these repository tables, the license is void or the service which they provide is zero. Okay, so even if you hear that somebody is having access to the repository tables, it is only the read access, no write access to anybody, because with read access you can do a lot of things using the repository tables. For example, if you want, let's say you are upgrading from 910 to 950, you want to know what are the total number of objects present in your whole system. So you can just check the details in a couple of tables, join them with a base ID called widget number, and you can get the whole list just like that with a query. Okay, however, if you have to do that manually, you have to open your tools, find out, or maybe manually count and do things like that. But like I said, a single record, even by mistake, if it is corrupted, your whole system is clogged up. You'll not be able to open any of these. Though you open admin console, you can see this service being down, because this service completely operates only on the repository database. Okay, that's the importance of the repository database. Okay, let me clear the screen for you. Okay, any questions till now? Please do chat if you have any questions. I'll just give a brief moment for the questions. Okay, so now, okay, so Ravikant's question is, do we cover PWX? That's not part of the agenda or the course content, but I can give you a brief overview of where that can be used or when that comes into picture, and what are the services you need to handle there. And Kiran, the main things which are required for your administration or configuration in the first place is your integration service, repository service, these two are the main components. These are not mandatory, but if you're operating with any of these environments, then these also should be configured. Your Web Services Hub and the BW integration. What is Web Services Hub or the BW integration? Web Services Hub is for handling your data coming from the web, which is nothing but your web services content, which is obviously your XML content. The other is SAP. You can directly connect to the SAP database as your source or the target. If you have any of that requirement, you have to configure this. But these two are primary and mandatory. Rest are all based on your requirement and optional. Now there is a question, can we have multiple repositories present on different nodes? How does the services work in the case? The answer is yes. We would talk about that in the coming slides. So okay. So let's talk about the services here. I just wanted to show that on your screen. Taking some time, so let me talk about this in the meantime. So what is integration service? Integration service is the one, or this service, like I said, is mandatory, is the one which executes the job, or this is the guy who maintains the traffic. Is just like the traffic police at the center who would ask a group to go now and somebody to stop, and this is to balance the traffic, or in Informatica terminology, let's say balancing the tasks. Okay, integration service would balance the tasks. Now, what is repository service? The whole and sole purpose of repository service is to read the repository database on which all our content is present and give it back to integration service or any other services which requires it. Okay, for example, let's say I want to run a task. Now I have a task name. I would just right click on any of the client tools, right click and start. The moment I right click on that and say start, it would be sent to the same request would be sent to the repository service from my integration service. Okay, and the repository service would connect to my repository database, fetch all the details, gives it back to the integration service, and integration service will start the process. That is the reason you have these two as the mandatory services. Okay, I have another good question. Now, the repository database and the domain database are two different schemas on the same database. The answer is yes. You can have it on two different schemas, and it's advised or a best practice to have it on two different schemas, because it is not because you will have unique constraints or the same table names. It is because that you can maintain them separately, and whenever you have to go for the backups or snapshot at the database level, it will be easy for us to identify which is domain related and what is repository related. Because today, let's say you install it today all your content is pretty simple. You will only have the number of tables. There are no records within any of those. Going forward down the line, 6 months or 1 year down the line, your repository content will become huge based on the development or the enhancements which you're doing. But your domain tables not increase in proportion like your repository content. Okay, so it is always advisable to have your repository content and domain content in different schemas, and having the snapshots or backups or any of those types of situations in of both the schemas. No, no, it is not. When I said domain database, it is the not the stream which you're working on. It is the a component on which we install it. It is the primary component on which the installation starts. These are the base set of tables, on which rest of all the components get installed. Okay, we will talk about that in the slides now. Okay, the other question, could it be two different databases on separate servers? Yes, it can be. There is no restriction as such, but like I said, it is always advisable or the best practice to have it on the same server so that maintenance is easy. Okay, so these are the services which are required. Now coming to the point of domain, what domain is? Oh, let me quickly check. I want this to come up so that I can show you. Okay. Now this is the thin client which I was talking about, which is nothing but a web page. Okay. This is the web page on which 90% of your admin tasks are done. So I'll just open it. I hope everybody is able to see the web page. Okay. Now if you see order here, the first thing which you have is organization happiness or on servers. The first thing after all your software is unpacked, the first thing it will ask you to give a name to the domain. Okay, and it will also ask you what is the database, what is the port number of the database, what is the username password for it to install the base tables. Now that username password or the user ID with which you're creating the domain table should have DBA access so that it can write it into the tables. Okay, once it is done, that is the base. Okay, now these tables also differ the number based on your licensing part. It will be anything between 100 to 150. Under the domain, you have all of these services. Okay, I'll click on actions here, new. See the list. You can have all of these under your domain. So domain is like the top of your hierarchy. Under that you have all of this which are subdivided in the hierarchy, and based on your requirement or based on the setup you want to do, you have to configure those kind of services. It is not mandatory that you should configure all of the services. The basic stuff to configure is your node and your repository service and the integration service. These three are good enough for you to start work or start your installation, or let's say you've set up all three, we can say that we are done. We are good with starting development or do whatever. Okay, what are the rest of the services? We'll talk about each of those. Now if you remember, I was talking about B2B, which would get your Word documents and PDFs. Now for that you have a service to be configured, because end of it you have to connect your Informatica sister concern tools with the standard edition for it to work. Or the other way of saying it is, all of your Informatica tools administration is a single point where you can manage it, which is nothing but your administration. Do the configuration and maintenance of your services. Okay, we'll talk about each of this now. Let me give little time on to the domain. We'll go back to the slide here. Okay, so what is the domain, or what does it consist of? It consists of nodes Node is nothing but your physical or the logical component of your domain. Now let's assume to have more clear understanding, let's say you have a 1 terabyte hard disk and 500 GB of RAM on a server. Okay, that is domain. You can have n number of nodes within that. Node is nothing but your logical division of your domain. For example, if you have 2 nodes, you can call it as 500 GB of hard disk and 250 GB of RAM in each of the nodes. Okay. Now, when we actually go to the hardware specifications, it wouldn't be the case, but the resources available for the domain are equally distributed to the number of nodes, and node is the one which can read the commands from the user. Okay, node is the component which will read the commands from the users and pass it on to the next level, which is nothing but your integration service, repository service, and all that. Nodes are, I mean, like I said, yes, those are physical machines, but when we say machines, it's not multiple servers here. It is the same server or the single server which can be divided into multiple nodes for your better load balancing. Okay. Now, don't get confused with the whole load of boxes here. Let me clearly explain you what each of it is. Now, on to your left completely, you have the client tools. Okay, these are the ones using which the development team or the admin team operates. Okay, the admin team is mainly concerned with your repository manager and admin console, which you have already seen. Now, any of the commands from any of these tools, including my web page, which is the admin console, is first sent to something called as master gateway, or this is the node which controls or which takes all your requests. Okay, based on the type of request you have asked, it will send it across to the rest of the services. So this would be active all the time, and this would distribute the tasks to the rest of the guys to do the jobs. Okay, and each one have its own dependency with the rest of the services for it to work. Okay, so if you see this, let's say I want to create a new node. Okay, creation of new node request goes here first, and from here it will go to the metadata, domain metadata, and let me quickly close this window. Okay, domain metadata, within which it will check what is the existing domain name and whatever points it can gather for that particular domain to be created. Once that is done, or let's say you have your configuration part of it, so the configuration happens here, and it will also give you the details of what level of let's say there is something missing while you're configuring it, then obviously that will send back the details to your gateway node, which will show up in your admin console again. So this process happens for all of the services whichever you see here, and not all services have been enabled here. Only you have repository service and integration service. Now each of this box has a meaning, and we will talk about all of this or more about these once we start with it. Okay, so if you go back to the admin console here, if you see the existing ones, this is the node which is already present. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. Okay, this is the main node. If you notice this property, gateway node, yes. Now this is the node which is present here. This is the master gateway, or this is the guy who is taking all of your commands from any of these tools. Okay, if you notice, the rest of whole thing is present under the domain. So domain is the base foundation, and on top of it you have all of these services running. Okay, now when we have multiple nodes, which will become the gateway node? Now by default, whichever node you create for the first time becomes your gateway node. Okay, let's say you have multiple nodes, and if you want to change, you have to go to the domain properties and change that option of making a node, let's say node 2, which you can see here on the left pan here. If you want to make this as a gateway node, you just have to click on edit and say yes to node 2, and that will start behaving as your gateway node, which will take all of your commands and pass it on to the next level of services. Okay, that's about node. The next things which are required are your repository service of the tables on your systems and the integration services. Okay, these are all related to your other applications. We'll talk about those once we are done with this. Now, what is the domain metadata, logs, and checkpoint? Now, domain metadata is the one which is read by your repository service and your master service. Why does repository service have to read my domain metadata? Because your integration service would sometimes require the details. For when I say sometimes, let's say you want to execute some jobs external to Informatica. You have some commands with which you can make Informatica more flexible, which will execute jobs external to Informatica using the scheduling tools and other options which you have. So in those cases, you also have to mention on which domain these are present. Okay, for that, repository service would have to contact the domain metadata to get the related content so that the right job is clicked at the right time. Okay, logs, obviously all the services need to use logs because this is the centralized location where you can find logs. See the logs tab here. If you click on the logs tab, you can see the whole list of activities happening across the services, across the jobs, and across, or this is the central log location where you can see whatever is happening on the server. Okay, it can be a very minute level of what is the database connection used for a table, or what is the target location which a target file is being created. Okay, and you can sort it based on various filters. The logs are not updated as of now because there was no activity in the recent past. Okay, that's centralized logging. Checkpoint. Checkpoint is more of a developer specific point here. It is nothing but, let's say I'm running a job and I want to, and there is a failure. I've started a job and there is a failure. Let's say after 5 million records of processing, it has failed. Now, if I have to restart it, do I have to restart it from record number 1, or can I start it from the fail point? Okay, you have an option called recovery that should be set at the developer level in one of the tools and one of the client tools here. When you set that option and you use the recovery option, then it would start from the last checkpoint. Checkpoint is similar to your last known good configuration on your Windows system. So whichever was the last good processed record, it will start from there so that you can save time on the first 5 million which have already been processed, and you can also save time on cleaning up the database whichever have already been done within those 5 million source records. Okay. Now web services, hub service, and the SAP BW, these are not mandatory, but if you have any of your source systems related to your web services. Now when we say web services, what does it mean? It means using Informatica, you can directly read the data from the web-based tables. Obviously, whatever you see on the web that has a backend table, so you can directly connect to those tables, read the data, and write into it as well. Okay, for that to happen, you need to have this service. This I have told you, your SAP content, you can directly connect to the backend SAP tables and read the data. Now you have integration services and integration services on grid. We'll talk about these a little later. If you come to the domain metadata, so now we are saying domain is the basement. So what is the actual role of domain? Okay, domain services. This is the core parts or core activities which a domain does. It will do the authentication process. It will help you with the configuration management and log services. These are the three main things which would be taken care by the domain by itself, apart from helping the other services to do their own jobs. Service management is nothing but the point which I just said. It will, as this serves as the main component for rest of the services to operate, that is under the service management. Okay, any questions on this diagram, anything which you want me to repeat? Now, where, for your question, I'm sorry, I'm not sure about the full name. So nodes are physical machines. Now, though it is SOA based architecture, you have a single server and you can install the client tools on multiple systems. Okay, when you say physical machines, the nodes which we are installing will still be on the server itself. We are not installing the nodes on each of the physical machines wherever the client is present. Okay, you have that one particular machine or the server on which you can have multiple nodes, which is nothing but we are physically dividing the resources on that server into multiple nodes so that it will be easy for us to maintain the volumes of data and for whatever reasons we are creating the nodes. There is okay, there is a question in the diagram, why cannot we see the integration between integration services and the repository service? Now that's coming up in the next slides. This is specifically to show you how the domain works on it. Okay, if you see it here, you can find it. Your integration service contacting your repository service here. We will talk about that. Now, how do we divide one server into multiple nodes? You just have to create new nodes, and when you create the new node, that becomes your primary and the backup of it. That is how you divide the single server into multiple nodes. Now, that's only logical division of your existing physical resources, but not you cannot see your data being divided into, or your hard disk being divided into two different let's say disk C and disk D, like your laptop. Okay, that's a point to be taken, but when you have two different services or two different servers, first of all, domain operates on a single server. Okay, now whatever you have said is not something which is not doable. We can still have two different machines, domain operating from both of those, but you would have to manage that in such a way that whenever there is a fail, whenever there is an error, on which server that is happening. Okay, you have a split domain methodology on which you can have this same domain being used on two different services, but that's a whole different maintenance part of it. So all the existing setups, to the extent I'm aware or I have seen, everything is on a single machine. But coming to the load balancing part, it is directly related to your infrastructure and the node setup. Okay, if I create a new node within this, I can make one as primary, the other as backup. Okay, now that is how I can manage the existing load, which would specifically run. Let's say node 1 is already up and running, and for some reason that is going down, node 2 will be ready to take that. Now you can always say that is a fallback strategy or the backup strategy, but what about load balancing? Now for load balancing, Informatica has a feature which is automatically switched on every time, or automatically switched on when the installation is complete. Based on the resource available, your integration service is intelligent enough to assign the available resources to the required jobs for them to complete as soon as possible. Okay. Now obviously, though it has that intelligence within itself, based on the volumes of the data, let's say all of your jobs are running pretty slow. Okay. Now obviously we have to do something for that to happen, for that to pick up. There are various strategies with which, obviously, that comes to the administrator. All the developers would come and start complaining that till yesterday everything was fine, but today something is wrong, the jobs are running slow, can you please check, and things like that. So there are some checkpoints or areas which you need to do the checks first, like cleaning up the existing stuff or removing the unnecessary parts of it, or checking with the database connection or the database team if there is some activity like hot backup or the cold backup going on which is causing this, and all things like that. We'll talk about the various situations at which this is happening. Okay, when that is happening, we have to try various different strategies again for that to come back up, and see how that has improved your performance. But if it is only the volumes, there is no other option other than upgrading your infrastructure to the higher technology or the higher specifications. Can you show the server name for two different nodes in a single domain? An admin console page which is currently open. Yeah. You have these two nodes here. Okay, node 1 and node 2. This is the one, right? Gateway configuration properties. Okay. Now both of these are under this domain. Now under a server I can have only one domain. Okay. I mean, my statement is not completely true, because you can have dual, but that has to do, I mean there is a but there, it has to do with the repository content on, sorry, the domain on which it is installed on the database. Okay, is this what you are asking? Your gateway configuration properties, you wanted to see the different nodes. Okay, okay, if you're specifically looking for that server name, as this is my own machine, this is the server name. Okay, this one, this is the server name, and that's the port number which I'm using to connect. So if these two are under this server, then it's the actual server name. Yeah, it is on the same server. So instead of saying same server, let's say under the domain, because a server will have only one domain. So if it is under the single umbrella of a domain server, okay, so it is under the domain here, and all the services whichever you see are present in my. Yes, your statement is right, but the second server, let's say you have another server, the second server also should have the specific domain. When I say specific domain, there is a whole lot of activity, like you have to copy the same content of your domain. Let's say on the separate server you will also have the database, and on that database you will have the same content, and you can create the node there. Okay, now to avoid all of this, you have something called as grid. Okay, for that, using that grids, you can avoid having multiple nodes on multiple servers. Grid will help you to do the same activity with which you want to accomplish using that on the multiple servers. Okay. Now there is a question from Ravikant. Can we make two nodes status to available at the same point on a single domain? Yes, Ravikant, we can always do that. It is not only two nodes, it can be any number of nodes, but at a given point of time, only one will be your gateway node. Okay. In this case now, the nodes, if you see, there are three nodes, two are not active, only one is active. The one which is active is my gateway node. I can have the rest of the two also active, but those would be waiting. When I say waiting, let's say you have enabled grid, okay, and you've assigned all of these into the grid. When we assign these nodes into the grid, all three will be active, all three will be operational, but the gateway node, or the node which I've specified it to be the gateway, will take the commands from the client tools. Okay, apart from doing the activities, it will take the commands and assign it to various services and the different nodes as well. Okay, so your understanding is okay. Kiran, what is the use of multiple nodes? Good question. There are many reasons. I'll give you a couple of them. First one is, let's say you want you bought a license from Informatica, but you want to use it for, okay, under the same domain, you can create multiple nodes to specifically divide or organize your project in such a way that each of the integration service and the repository service are assigned to a specific node. For example, instead of this name, let's say I call it as node01_finance. Okay, for that finance, I have two services, my integration service and repository service, specifically working on finance module. Okay, next I have, let's say, payroll or HR for that matter. I can have another node, node01_HR, and under this I have separate integration service for HR, for HR. Okay, that's one. The second one is, if you're enabling, you can point multiple nodes or the services onto the same grid. Now, grid is again for balancing your jobs or sending the tasks in a manner where it automatically uses the resources in full to perform better. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, there is another question. In the current situation, I have node 2 or two nodes down. Now, in this case, is the load balancing switched off? No, it is not. It is very much on, and whatever node is will do the load balancing with the available resources on the system. Okay. When we say different repository services, good question again, Trupti. Now, that depends on how I want to see it. Okay, let's say I have finance and HR again. Repository service can be the same here, but my integration service would differ. If I want to specifically divide that, okay, I don't want to clog up both, or I don't want to mix both of them. I want to have a different repository service for finance and a different for HR. I can still have it. And you can have it all under one database in different schemas. Okay. But usually it is, I mean, I have seen multiple repository databases, but usually, let's say you're having 2 or 3 modules, and they usually put everything. Yeah, the better option is to have a single repository database, because on a daily basis or on a fortnight basis, your repository database is backed up. Okay, it is an automated task, or it should be a mandatory automated tasks by the by the DBAs or the database administrator to take snapshots of your repository content, because there are various reasons why a repository can be corrupt, and whenever there is something of that kind of situation, you should be able to get the latest version so that you would not miss out any of the changes or enhancements done. So it is, the better option is to have a single repository and have no write access to anybody, or read access for that matter, and have snapshots on a daily basis. Okay, any other questions? Now, all of your questions about the nodes, domains, grids, these will be cleared out once we move ahead with the slides. But as we so that's not a big matter. We'll discuss each of the points. We'll try to do things here on the system. I'll show you how to set up things and work out on those, or if you want to have it on your systems, we have action steps from which you can download the software, install it on your machines, and you can play around. You can try all of those options. Okay, I would Linux machine, yes, we can still do it, but do you have a Linux machine to install it? The installation steps for Windows or Linux is almost the same, but in any Unix version or non-Windows version, it is just that you have to give the options in the command mode. Like, do you want to set up a node? Yes, no, Y and N, things like that. It is almost the same. Okay, and the other point which I want to be clear on is there are some activities which cannot be done within the session or within the hour time which we have. For example, let's say we want to enable the other node. Whenever you want to add a new node, you have to literally follow the installation process. Okay, when we follow the installation process, that would take more than an hour or 2 hours. Okay, now why we have to follow the installation process again? Because we have to assign these nodes to the domain. Now, I can always go here, click on new node, just give the properties and say OK. The moment I say OK, I'll have a node here. Well, the actual reason the nodes are inactive are this. I should be creating these nodes using the installation process. Okay, when you install it, you have two options: create a new node, join the existing domain. When you take the second option, then you would have an option of creating the nodes which will be active from then. If you just create the nodes here, it would just give you cannot add them as your gateway node. That is the reason the other two are inactive. Okay, so I can give you the steps on how that can be done. You have to do it on your systems, because as this is a daily session, within that 1 hour we might not be able to show everything to you, but whatever is possible, I'll show those to you on the system here. Okay, next is, can we have workaround on UDF, and do we have scheduling tool DAC explained? Okay, UDFs no, because we don't have B2B setup, and that's a whole different, that's on the developer track. It is not part of the admin track, so that is not there. DAC is also not part of it, because DAC is not only a scheduling tool. I'm not sure if you have worked on it. It is a lot more to the scheduling tool than only assigning and running jobs. So that's a whole different topic, or the course which you have to go for. I'm done. How much more time will you take? I've actually stopped it because we are 1 hour. And as this was a demo, so whatever has been said, we'll talk about all of these again once we start the regular session in detail. Yeah, even in production, in real-time scenario, if you have to add a new node to your production box, you have to have, or you have to follow the installation process only. That is how your node will be active. Else you'll have a node created, but that will be inactive, just like this on the screen. Okay, that's the only way. There is no other faster way to do that. The other faster way to do it is to create actions in you, but that will be inactive. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, any questions regarding your session timings and when would we start, course content, any of those details? My friend Kapil is there to address those. You can drop him a mail after the session and he'll address them back to you. Okay, you'll get all the content once we start working on things. Yes. Okay guys, if no other questions, we can. Thank you. We can end the session today. Well, it is a 6-day course, so you'll get a mail on when this will be started. If you have already started, tomorrow would be holiday because it being a Sunday. But based on the things going on, we'll either start it from tomorrow or day after tomorrow. You'll get a mail if it is being started tomorrow. Kapil, you'll get a mail from Kapil. Okay guys, thanks for your time, and okay. No, it is 28-hour class, 28 hours, weekly 6 hours. Questions, I'm open anytime. We can extend the sessions based on the questions you have. There is no limitation on that. Well, if you get any ideas of can we do this, can we do that, obviously I might not have not got it, and if that is doable and if you want to give it a try, we'll still do it on the system, either on your system or my system. We'll see if that's going to work. Whatever situations I've worked on, I'll be able to give you the or tell you why something works and something doesn't. But if you have any new strategy, let's say I want to do this, can we do this, can we try that? If there is a feasibility, we'll try to put that quickly onto the system and see if that works. If it does not, then we can say that's a not doable situation. Yes, Ritik, go ahead, please. Not really. I mean, it is just the environment on which you want to maintain it. Okay. Everything is the same, but if it is Windows, it is GUI addition. If it is Linux, you just have to use the commands. That's the only difference. But how Informatica operates or how the tasks are done by the admin, the only difference is the GUI and the commands. That's all. But the operations of Informatica, the way things should be set up, would be almost the same. Okay, let's say I have a prompt here, yes, no. You'll have a prompt there in Linux as well. If it is mandatory that you should give database names, then it will say this should be given there, even in there. Actually, yes, it is, but we will not, or not everybody goes for Linux only for this reason. If you're having other technologies also being maintained, for example, your scheduling tool, reporting tool, and all that, or specifically, just like Ravikant asked, if you're going for DAC Unix version or this, then you can go with Linux. But given a chance, or if you go ask Informatica, they would also say Informatica runs faster on Unix or Linux box. But how does the business want to operate it is the main question, and based on their requirement, we can set it up either on Linux or Windows. Well, like I said, most of the things are similar to what we do in Windows. Okay, if let's say you want to have that option of new node creation, you'll be prompted with those two options, new domain and join a domain. So you have to choose join a domain there using the command, where in Windows I'll click on the radio button. So it is 99% same. There is no change to the way we set up things or do the maintenance. Like I said, here I click on something, there I have to write a command. That's all. We have an option. We will deal with that in the regular sessions. Now, installation steps and configuration steps, like I said, we already have a predefined document which gives you step-by-step clear instructions from where to download and how do you install it. Anywhere you are stuck, will help you. But please make sure if you're trying to install it on your Windows machine, Home Premium doesn't work. You should have higher version, either the Ultimate or the Professional one, or Windows 8. Any of those would work. Mm, 80% of it, and if you want rest of the tools, rest of the client tools, you have to go with the standard edition course, because it is not mandatory for an administrator to know what's happening at the development level. But if you're aware, it is a good option. Okay, so I would assume those are the questions. Thanks for your time, and I would apologize again for the delay in the beginning. And you guys have a good day and Happy New Year. We'll see you again later.
The organizer